Good evening, everyone. This is Brock Beard from Nascar.info. I want to thank you first and foremost, those of you who were able to come by and read before February. I know it was released last November, but I'm sure for those of you who've seen it, who have seen both versions, you know, you can see why I had to re-release it. There was a lot of other content, Jeff Burton, Kyle Petty, other interviews that came up since then, other material, I think that really gave it the full story. And I thank you so much for those of you who gave me some great input from the video last year. I really want to kind of polish it a little bit more and make it something that is even more deserving of your guys' attention there. And then, of course, with today being the anniversary of the loss of Kenny Irwin and that tragic accident in New Hampshire in 2000, was certainly the opportunity, and I feel a good way to put a video up. I thought about doing another sequel or something else like it. I don't think that I could have made anything else that would have been suitable in that time. So decided to go ahead and re-release it there. So again, thank you so much, first and foremost, to all of you guys for checking it out. For those of you who did miss it there, it is publicly available, of course, on the channel. It's available on the thing there, so you can check that out. And I hope that it's, hope it's something that make sure you keep spreading it. Make sure you keep spreading the word, keep sharing it with your friends and all that. Share the link, make sure everybody knows more about these other drivers out there. This is for those. I don't remember how much I discussed this back when the video first came out last November, but this was definitely a story that I think needed to be told, really, and it's one that, much like I say at the end of the video, and I didn't change any of that part of it, because I didn't want to lose the tone of that. When Dale Earnhardt died, as awful and as tragic as it was, it did overshadow some serious safety controversies that came over during the 2000 season, and even further back than that. I mean, there have been several serious injuries in the sport and fatalities that had happened in NASCAR's history, certainly going back to J.D. McDuffie and then even further back in the sport. But this, the basilar skull fractures, the issues with the Hans device, it really came to fever pitch during the 2000 season. And it was I know a lot of you out there are probably too young to remember it as a time that it happened. Let me tell you this. I mean, it was a very frightening time. And especially with a lot of these young stars, these three particular drivers, Adam Petty, Kenny Irwin Jr., and Tony Roper, all of them being multiple generation athletes. I mean, certainly in Adam's case, being potentially the first ever fourth generation professional athlete in sports, it was a tremendous loss. And as Jeff Burton said in that excellent interview that he gave for the Scene Vault podcast, it wasn't okay for these drivers to be dying in the ways they were, and for NASCAR to just keep going. But you see the challenge of everything at the same time. These happening in the middle of the season, and everything happening, and you have another race going, and so forth. But then when Dale Earnhardt died in February of 2001, there were discussions very early on about them not even running to Rockingham the next week. It very nearly stopped the sport in its tracks. And I think that, a lot of that, of course, is Dale Earnhardt and the magnitude of his loss, and that can't be overstated. But within the context of everything that had happened in the 2000 season, that you literally had a death in each of NASCAR's top three national touring series within just weeks apart, not even full months apart in some cases. It was a very difficult and very controversial time. And this is just from a fan's perspective. Just imagine people that were in the media or people working on these teams and everything. It was very much a difficult thing. And there was also a culture change that occurred to it. We hear about this a lot, even in today's NASCAR, but in the 2000 season, it was very much a culture change as to what kind of endurance these drivers are going to go through, and what is an acceptable risk, knowing that motorsports is dangerous, knowing that it is very easy to lose your life or have serious injuries out there, and what drivers are able to push through that. And and again, I encourage you to check out any of the videos that were used in that are all in the comments, are all in the description of the video, so you can check out those, as links to all of them is in a Google document. Among those, of course, is the Scene Vault's interview with Jeff Burton, and I can't overstate how significant that is. Pretty much when that interview came out, I knew I had to re-release this video, because not enough can be said about Jeff Burton's role in it and the culture that was around him at the time, where he was speaking out about these safety issues, and yet some weren't taking it seriously, or perhaps saying that, oh, well, these are just young drivers, they didn't know what they were doing, or maybe they were too easily hurt versus other drivers. There was definitely a culture shift that was already happening in the sport with these younger drivers coming up. But I think with that came this very big issue with safety, and that's a part of the story that maybe is something that NASCAR doesn't really want to talk about or think about. But as I said, those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. And and again, and as awful as it is to conclude, it's when you put it all together chronologically and everything that led up to it. The number 3 may have meant something after February, but before February, it was just about Adam Petty, Kenny Irwin Jr., and Tony Roper. And would Dale Earnhardt have still survived if they had safer barriers, or even just a stopgap measure with just mandating the Hans device, if they just required him to wear it? Who knows? But the awful reality is that we never got to know. And there was just the sequence of events that occurred back then. So, and yes, and I see those of you already mentioning Ryan Newman's accident this year. That was pretty close to the experience of it. And thankfully, hopefully that's as close as we ever get to it for anything in the foreseeable future. The sport is always dangerous, and there are always those who maybe would be more concerned about safety than others, and there are those that have different opinions about it than others. But the advancements in the sport since then are undeniable. There may be challenges still ahead with the Gen 6 car, the next gen car further down the line. But you only have to look at Indianapolis this past weekend with all those tire failures. Certainly didn't count on that when they originally planned this, but my goodness, you just look at any of those wrecks: Denny Hamlin, Alex Bowman, Eric Jones. These drivers hitting the wall very hard at the end of very long straightaways with no margin for error. Of course, Indy is could be treacherous for any series, and it has a long history of its own. But in each of those cases, you get to see these drivers climb out under their own power, maybe be a bit sore or something, but certainly not what we saw in the 2000 season. One thing that comes up actually during the documentary, you notice, is a lot of the discussion about the throttle stops and things of that nature came up prior to Indianapolis, which happened to be Kenny Irwin's home track, and there was a tribute there. But there were concerns, and probably during the 2000 race at Pocono there, where Ricky Rudd had what by all intents seemed to be another sub-throttle like Kenny Wallace had at Martinsville earlier that year, where you see those tire tracks going up into the wall and the severity of the damage to the right front corner. Rudd is, again, another one of these drivers that's been tough as nails and, seemed to shake it off in the interview and not be too concerned about it. But clearly something happened there that could have very easily been another incident. And, and it's one of these situations where, if the safety systems become so commonplace and are out there to a point where, they almost get taken for granted. And that's a very big part of it. And the reason we are able to take it for granted is because, they've had this infrastructure in there, and these drivers have been able to work within those boundaries. And thankfully, more often than not, we see drivers walk away. And Ryan Newman's thing was extremely serious, not to downplay that at all. But thankfully, those wrecks so far have been in the minority. They have not been commonplace. And that, I think, is the best possible legacy for Adam Petty, Kenny Irwin Jr., Tony Roper, and then, of course, any of the other drivers, Dale Earnhardt and Blaze Alexander, on top of all of that. It was a difficult time in the sport. It's one that, again, I know NASCAR probably doesn't want to think much about, and one that is colored most oftenly in Dale Earnhardt's wreck, but it's a very different situation from there, and that's where all of that plays up. I think the tragedy of the handoff in the 2000-2001 season is something I didn't really emphasize in the documentary, but you can see it from the narrative there. In the 2000 season, of course, that was the eve of the new TV contract coming into the 2001 season. And you have this safety concern that all these networks are covering, ESPN and TNN and TBS and all that. And it's a part of all the broadcasts. And any wreck is being looked at more critically, perhaps, than it had been even in previous years. But then you have this new TV contract with Fox in 2001, and I think it's possible that maybe that story was downplayed and not really brought up a whole lot. Maybe that had a reason for why this story didn't carry over into the 2001 season. And whether that was a conscious decision or just a consequence of embarking on this new thing. Because I remember in 2001 how exciting it was when Fox was coming into the sport. You had just a completely fresh start with the broadcasting group. You had Darrell Waltrip in there right after he retired. You had a lot of money coming into the sport on top of what was already a very successful period in the sport in the late 90s coming into it. And it could be just a situation like we see with CTE in the NFL, and something where they're trying to address a concern like this, but hey, the glitz and glamour of it, like mentioned in the Woody article, perhaps kind of outshone that. And again, it's not a conscious decision or a willing disregard of all that, but maybe again, not treated as seriously like, okay, well, we'll figure this out. We got things we're kind of working on to kind of get there, but hopefully it's not going to be a clear progression. But it's very difficult to get in a situation like that, and I think that's a part of the story that's important to cover. So I certainly hope that the video gets spread. I mean, it's already, but the other version was already spread quite a bit, and I really appreciate all you guys for sharing it out there. And I'm keeping the old version on there because there's a lot of fantastic comments on there in the original chat and everything like that. I'll keep it up. It'll be a little confusing with this one up there and the other one, but again, I think that was worthwhile to cover this a little bit more coherently and make it look a little more professional, like as a film. Also putting in the warning, of course, about the fatal accidents at the beginning. I felt that was kind of lacking in the last one, and I didn't want anybody coming into it unprepared, certainly. I think that the long term, I'd like it to be a movie that perhaps attracts people even outside the sport, or maybe have no awareness of these drivers and what happened to them. But I want them to be forewarned in that too, because of course this was a dark period in the sport, and a series of events that maybe people are not quite willing to see at the same time. But that is definitely something I wanted to do on there. So I appreciate you guys bearing with me and checking out the video and spreading that. And I hope again that it is shared forward, because it is a story that, again, I think is a proper cautionary tale in motorsports in particular. That when there is a particular issue in the sport, whether it seems small at the beginning or not, it could be something that just builds and builds and becomes more serious. This is why I harp on the issue of the cockpit heat issue with the passenger side window put on the car. Got into the point where Denny Hamlin was talking about this a few weeks ago during one of those rain delay broadcasts. Hopefully that's not going to be something that is of serious enough issue that can actually injure these drivers. But I've seen this firsthand just at Sears Point last year with drivers like Cody Ware and J.J. Ailey, just completely exhausted. In Ware's case, he actually had to get helped out of the car, and paramedics were there very quickly. It's a very serious story, and we're seeing now with these races being rescheduled in the summer and trying to cram as many of them together as possible. And they're showing the temperature gauge in the car, and the point where the temperature gauge at Indianapolis in some of these cars was just shorting out. I'm not saying that at the same time, much like with the safety issue in 2000, that it's ever going to be a situation where people are driving around like in a passenger car and it's going to be 65 degrees in there and completely comfortable. But you do have to consider that in motorsports, everything should be getting better along the way. The cars should be getting safer. The track should be getting safer. The response from medical staff should be safer. Why is the heat in the cockpit getting worse? It's one thing if it stayed about the same or maybe scale back a little bit, but why is it getting worse? That's the point that needs to be hammered and understood in there. And I think that there is an openness. We've certainly seen a lot of conversations in the sport about where it's heading and what things are and everything. And I won't get into the political side of it, but I think the essence of it, where they're taking a look at things within NASCAR and looking at it in a more critical light, I do think that that's a positive thing. And I think that if that culture maybe existed back in 2000 or in early 2001, perhaps the events of that season would have played out differently. And hopefully the video, I think, can bring that to bear and a discussion of it. So, There were, again, a couple of interviews there. I think the last clip that I added to it was the one where Kyle Petty was commenting on Adam, being the next Petty to run for years to come. I saw that one after I came back from work a couple days ago, and I'm like, okay, that absolutely has to be in there. It really boggles the mind, how many courses were completely and fundamentally altered from these three accidents. And even though, Adam Petty's one, clearly, the future of Petty Enterprises right when they were all coming together, that was certainly a significant point. And we see the effects of that today. Ultimately, Petty Enterprises as a team doesn't even really exist now. Richard Petty Motorsports is a whole completely reincorporated organization that thankfully has kept Petty in the sport and the number 43 out there. But there was a serious controversy with that, and that was ultimately the reason why Kyle Petty left the sport at the end of 2008, and why they don't run the 45 anymore is a very different thing. Then you look at the Sabatas team, the Sabatas merger into Chip Ganassi Racing, a team that very nearly won Indianapolis with Matt Kenseth just this past Sunday. That merger happened, and Sabatas was still in the sport as an associate, and then ended up leaving the sport last year. How different would that have been if that lineup was still Kenny Irwin Jr. and Sterling Marlin going into 2001, with how well Marlin did in the 2001 season? Would Kenny Irwin have done better than the late Jason Leffler did in the 01 car? Who knows? And then Tony Roper, again, a driver that's much more downplayed in the story because not a lot is shown about him, and you see that certainly from the clips there. But Mike Midler was a significant figure in the sport, and when he says that Roper could have been a great crew chief or somebody really helping out, that carries a lot of water. Midler's team has been huge. He's really kind of like the Don Levy Racing of the Truck Series for starting so many careers. Jimmy McMurray, you saw Carl Edwards, other figures like that, and every one of those trucks right up to Midler's passing still had that decal on there honoring Roper, because he knew how much talent he had and what skills he had, and what could have been had things played out differently. And then of course what happened in 2001 on top of that, not just with Dale Earnhardt and Blaze Alexander, but then Tony Roper's father Dean at the same time during that same year. It was, not to harp on this too much, but it was an extremely difficult time in the sport. And, one that, again, is as long as it is remembered, it will still serve notice as perhaps avoiding something more serious further down the line. And that would be a different set of circumstances from there. So I'm just checking out your comments here. If you have any other questions or anything on the video or anything else that didn't make sense or anything that you want to talk about, I'm certainly open to that. I'm going to keep this pretty open-ended. We can do some trivia along the way too, if you like. I wasn't sure if that would jive well with everything on this, but we can certainly do that if you guys like. But definitely checking out your guys' comments on here. It's unfortunate, what happened with Adam Petty, and yeah, the question of course always is how much better these drivers could have been in their careers. And Petty Enterprises being what it was, already signing a new sponsor with General Mills and everything, what would have happened. But this was definitely a different situation like that. I will mention that I have another video in the works. Those in my Patreon, you already know what the subject is. I think I've already mentioned it in one of my live streams before. That one hopefully we'll have here later this month. I'm shooting at maybe sometime this month, if not beginning of next month. Will be another story that I think will be interesting, and we'll keep going with the content on there. The Jeffrey Bodine accident, that was the other thing too, and I didn't want that to be too distracting to the subject matter of the video. The other things that happened during the 2000 season that weren't talked about that much, or were in other cases. If we're talking about Jeff Bodine's Truck Series wreck, when NASCAR had this new restrictor plate package, or not running restrictor plates for the trucks, that is, and then him having that serious accident, the walkway collapse that happened after the Winston in the year 2000. Kyle Petty's stuck throttle that happened at Talladega in 1999. Again, I think the important thing, and perhaps this is a part of journalism or just coverage in the sport in general, I think it's so important to lay out a clear chronology and understand your place in it, to know where things are heading, and if there is some kind of obstacle that needs to be overcome, or something that needs to be like, wait a minute, let's stop on this and revise this for a bit. And, it's not to say that NASCAR did nothing in that time. Of course, I think the tragic issue during the 2000 season is that there were two clear issues that were happening at exactly the same time. The first was the issue of the stuck throttles, which was clear at the very least since Kenny Wallace's issue at Martinsville. And it's astounding, given Wallace's career, that he said that he never had that happen before, and that it happened 2 laps into the race when everything should be just fine on the car after practice and qualifying and everything. That wasn't a race like we have now where they didn't have practice and qualifying, and then that car's throttle hung and just put him straight into the wall. That he never experienced that in dirt track racing, working his way into the Busch Series and the Cup Series and all that, that he never did. That should have been a serious red flag at the time. And that's the progression that needed to be understood. I mean, the Truck Series accident, what was it, with Dennis Setzer at the same time, at the same track that weekend. It was clear that there was a stuck throttle issue that needed to be addressed, and NASCAR did address that. If they put the button, the actual kill switch button, which apparently isn't there anymore. That was news to me this morning. I'm still looking to get some more information on that. I appreciate the user that brought that up to me this morning, because I thought the button was still there in all the series, because it seems like you would want to have a manual control that's easily reachable if that happens. Leaving it up to the car, it seems, would be a step backward into what we had in the 2000 season, where they were trying to do these dumb switches and dead man switches where, like Bobby Labonte had the issue with, where the sensor wasn't working and things like that. That could be a serious issue. Apparently that's changed. That was news to me. But that was one part of the issue, though. I think the problem that NASCAR had that year is they viewed that as the entire issue. Is that, okay, well, that they need to have the stuck throttles. And then when they moved past that, there became this narrative about the cars are going too fast for the track. And it's like, well, okay, that's true, but not accurate. You have an issue where, yes, you're having high-speed accidents at not really the fastest track at New Hampshire. This is well before the Texas thing, of course. Texas being much faster, of course. But in the cases of the New Hampshire accidents with Petty and Irwin, you clearly had an issue where the throttles were hanging and putting the cars to the wall. But separate from that was a second issue of these particular head and neck injuries. And the similarity of the injuries between Petty and Roper should have been addressed more seriously, that it wasn't just the fact that the cars were entering the corners too fast, because then that would be a situation for like all the drivers out there. Like, I mean, there were other crashes that were happening and drivers weren't dying from those. So you had to wonder, why were these particular accidents causing this particular fatal injury? And that's where the discussion of the Hans device comes in. That's where the discussion of the theory of even having head and neck restraints, which were looked into by open wheel racing. That was one of the corrections in there. It wasn't finalized at the time, but they were looking into it in kart and Formula One, that NASCAR should have looked at that part of it. And unfortunately, that was the part of it that was lacking. And apparently, from what you hear with Jeff Burton's interview, there was a culture issue with that, where some just didn't want to use it. And this was something that I think was misunderstood the first time I posted the video, and maybe I worded it not the best way. The interviews with Dale Earnhardt in the summer of 2000 about, you hear about the quote where he says, like, if it's like putting on a noose, if you put this on, it's going to act like it hangs you and it's going to break your neck. There's interviews where that quote is misattributed to saying that was the reason that he didn't trust the Hans device. But if you look at those articles in NASCAR Scene, that's not the proper context of the quote. The proper context of the quote is that is the reason he doesn't like full-faced helmets. It's the full-faced helmets that he believed was going to cause a neck fracture. And that's why he looked at Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin. They both had full-faced helmets. And I think NASCAR Man had a video posted earlier where he showed Earnhardt testing one of Ken Schrader's helmets. And that was a concern he had. And I think it was just the weight of the helmet. So he has a discussion with Dave Marcus that's in the video there, where he talks about, that if you have these full-face helmets, they're more dangerous. And that if you have an open-faced helmet, you're not going to have that issue. Either maybe the helmet weighs less, or maybe your head moves around a lot more or moves less, or whatever the belief was. But that was the issue. He wasn't addressing the Hans device as causing that neck injury. But unfortunately, I've seen at least one interview I don't remember the person's exact name, so I don't want to attribute it incorrectly, but I know I've seen it where that quote was attributed to the reason that he didn't pick the Hans device. Now, what his opinion on the Hans device was, that's a little less clear. I hope to have some more information on that, and maybe there'll be something that I discuss on that at a later time. But from what I can tell, the Hans device, I mean, even though he didn't wear the Hans device, did he, that particular quote, that particular message wasn't the reason that he didn't have that opinion. And unfortunately, it may be academic in the end of it because he didn't have it, and of course the accident happened at Daytona, and not having it was ultimately one reason that accident was fatal. So that was a big issue in there, and I ended up leaving that part about the same. And also, and that's why I also put Dave Marcus's crash at Pocono in there, because again, in another Scene Vault interview, you can hear that Dave Marcus wasn't against head and neck restraint devices because he and Phil Barkdahl were coming up with the same collar device that was used in ARCA to help support the head and neck. It's kind of like, I remember riding go-karts before, and they have that, like at the K1 shop over in Roseville, California, they give you like that collar around it so that you're wearing this big heavy helmet and your neck is supported. It kind of takes some of that tension off your neck and gives you that support. You're of course not having a full-on Hans device in these carts, but you're having a little bit of that support so that, yeah, if you do hit something, even at go-kart speeds, it's not going to be a serious issue with that. But that's going to be a different issue with that. So that was again one of the other aspects. Now hopefully that comes across a little better in the story. The other thing about Adam Petty's crew chief passing away before he won his first ARCA race at Charlotte. I did find that article that came up there about an injury that was suffered during a pit stall. As you can tell, that would have been very difficult to put into the video, at least the way that it did. I know I mentioned other things that happened earlier in the season, like the truck series, the hauler accident that Kenny Irwin's team had at the beginning of 2000, but I couldn't find a good way to really kind of put that in there. But it's definitely worth seeing. For those of you who haven't seen the article that was addressed there, I'll put it in the chat here. But that kind of gives you more context because I know that Adam mentions that in his interview during that one as well. Seems a question about the Hutchins device. That's another interesting element there. I know I don't go into that in the video, but the Hutchins was, I believe, the one that Simpson Race Products was putting forward as a cheaper alternative to the Hans. That the Hans was being promoted and being advanced there, but there was this other device that was coming along at the time, and I believe Dale Jr. was actually using the Hutchins. I think it was Jr. and like Spencer and some other drivers there. I don't remember who exactly had them, but by the early 2001, especially after Daytona, things started loosening up and you started having more people using them. But then tragically, of course, the actual mandate didn't come into play until Blaze Alexander's, which surprised me when I first made it. I thought the mandate came in pretty soon after Earnhardt's because that's what we've, again, been told and told to understand. But when you look at when you dig into the research on this and really look into it, it's awful to reveal, but it wasn't until Blaze Alexander's, a wreck that wasn't even though ARCA is affiliated with NASCAR now under that umbrella, it was a completely different race series with a very similar injury. I don't know as to the technical differences between the Hutchins device, the Hans device. I can't go into that too much in depth. I don't know exactly how the Hutchins device worked. I remember a lot of the drivers were wearing like these black straps that went like down their shoulders and were like fastened off, kind of looked like suspenders a little bit. But it didn't have like the big plastic or fiberglass or whatever it's made out of, like device that's put on your shoulders and then strapped in, like strapping the helmet and then strapped to the car. That was that seemed to be the demarcation. I don't know what the difference was there for that. But clearly this was a time that, again, when you're in the middle of it at the time, and there are people out there, longtime beat reporters that could comment on this certainly better than I could, of just what it was like, covering the sport at that time, knowing, you watch something like Rush and you hear about times in Formula One where you knew that a certain number of drivers were probably not going to survive the season. And to think about that now is unthinkable nowadays, even with whatever dangers are in the sport. And certainly in the year 2000 was unacceptable. In NASCAR in particular, you didn't have that many fatalities, especially in that short of a time, going back to like the 60s at least. Of course, in '93, you had you had plane crashes that claimed the life of Kawicki and Allison. In '94, you had the 2 accidents during speed weeks, which was bad enough with Neil Bond and Rodney Orr. But to have 3 across different disciplines spread out through an entire year and happening in such similar circumstances, that really was a critical time in the sport. And there's so much more to that story, even than what's in the video. It's something I thought of making a book about that would probably do it, but I think there's a lot in the video that you need to see. You need to see, Steve Wade's, mention of Adam Petty at that. You need to see just unbelievable the interviews that the pit road reporters gave in New Hampshire in 2000 after Irwin's death, between the late Steve Burns, Glenn Jarrett. Certainly hope Glenn is feeling well. Of course, I know there was a message yesterday that he's recovering from surgery today. And then Ralph Shaheen as well gave amazing statements there on Irwin's career, and I really want to make sure that was in the video as well. Yeah, it was a difficult a difficult time in the sport, but again, a lot. I think when you see the video of it, and again, when it happened at a time where you had so much content like that, I don't think a book would really do that story justice. You have to really see, and I really want to make sure that you could hear each of these drivers and get used to their mannerisms. I think another clip that I really wanted in there, because I knew it was in my old time capsule video I did on my channel years ago. I think it was in 2011. That clip of Kenny Irwin Jr. and Kenny Wallace laughing at Suzuka when they're trying to figure out how to drift around the track. Remembering the good times as well. I think, Irwin, and I've said this many times before, and, he was the first driver I ever wanted to interview, even before I had any inclination of actually trying to find a career in media or do something like that. He always seemed like he had something on his mind. I know he struggled a lot in the 28 car, and he had a tremendous amount of pressure on him. I didn't know much about him personally, and I never met him personally, but, I think, a lot of times looking at, some of these stories of these different drivers that don't get talked about that much, I kind of keep Irwin in mind a little bit that, it's still an unpredictable sport, and you just never know. You just never know in these cases. So I think that's where you have to really have a lot of respect for these drivers that are in the sport, regardless of how well they compete or what they're dealing with and everything, because they are unbelievably brave to face the dangers that they face, if only for the chance at victory in one way or another. And I think that's something that hopefully does come across as well. I encourage you all to, certainly, I know things are difficult right now, of course, but I have all the information still in there copied over from the other video. I think one thing that's great about it is, of course, you hear about Victory Junction in the honor of Adam Petty's death. It's being run on Bubba Wallace's car as well in recent weeks. The number 43, with the collaboration with the sponsor they have. Kenny Irwin Jr. has his foundation. I was able to speak with the person still operating the foundation personally. And when we did that charity drive last year, they were very thankful for that one. And we're still in the process of getting the Tony Roper Scholarship Fund started back up. Paperwork's already been filed. I don't know if it's the COVID that's holding it up or anything, but I have the funds still held aside there from the auction last year, and it's ready to go in there the moment they give me the green light. So the address that's shown in there should still be the same. I'll update that if that ever changes. That's still going to be a part of it too. And then that'd be great to have all 3 of those organizations back up and running along with everything else. So I think that's a great thing too. So if you're interested in those organizations, that information's all, of course, in the description of 3 before February, and I encourage you to check that out as well. As you can see, I'm wearing my Kenny Irwin hat here. I wore this at Phoenix last year for something you can see. It's got the signature on there. This is different from the one I posted on Twitter earlier with the autograph on it. I bought this one actually back in 2011, years ago, and I like being able to just wear it out there because you just don't see it that often. At Phoenix last year, I spoke to the team chef for Starcom Racing when I was through the garage area, and he noticed I was wearing this, and it really stood out. He knew. I'm so sorry that his name escapes me at this moment, but he said that he knew Kenny back in that time there, and he really liked seeing that back out there. So I originally had my white hat on hand, but I decided to wear this hat much more that day. And if I do cover New Hampshire one of these days, you better believe this is going to be in my bag. So I'll tell you what. But really, it's as much. Even though today was the anniversary of what happened with Kenny Irwin Jr., I do believe it is symbolic of all 3 of them, between Adam Petty and Tony Roper as well. Because what was also difficult during that 2000 season is when Adam Petty's crash happened, it was perceived to be a freak accident. And as you can see in that interview during Dover, you know, there was a lot of injury concern about how injured he was in that. That was a very serious accident. And Kyle Petty being understandably upset about what had happened after that wreck occurred. But when Irwin's accident happened, it certainly recontextualized what happened with Adams. And it was really from there on, as you see in the video, that the safety debate really picked up speed. Even though the Hans device was already kind of being pushed forward a little bit, maybe in June of that year, it was really Irwin's accident that really set this course towards a serious safety debate, towards the restrictor plate race at New Hampshire, and of course towards what happened to Tony Roper and the others afterwards. So that's why I felt that if there was going to be re-release of this, that this day would be most significant, not because Irwin's passing was more significant than the others, but it was as a moment in that season, it was significant to the change of the perception of what was a serious injury and what was acceptable risk within NASCAR. And I think that's something that hopefully does come across. So definitely wanted to mark that today on that. One other thing that comes up in the video that I didn't get more information on, you notice in the TNN interview or the TNN opening that was done for the September New Hampshire race, there's a test that apparently was done at Charlotte Motor Speedway where they dropped a car from a crane into what looked like some plastic boxes or barrels or something. And apparently there weren't any reviews. I haven't been able to find any other information on that. I didn't see anything on J-Ski, so I didn't elaborate anything more on that in this new version. I felt that what was shown in the video was sufficient. Apparently, I don't know if it was something that I seen some comments about the Humpy bumper on there. I don't know if that was what that was from, or if that was something separate from the Car of Tomorrow or something like that. I'd have to do a refresher on that. But again, I think it is just another thing that was this symbolic of the frustrations at that time. And Bobby Labonte's hung throttle, that was another big thing that really I felt needed to be in there. Because again, that was equally significant to Kenny Wallace and Ricky Rudd's accident, and that Labonte won Darlington in a backup car because he had a stuck throttle that basically put him in the wall. And he had a very outspoken comment. I mean, these are, again, drivers like Bobby Labonte and Jeff Burton. Prior to 2000, people probably would think that they were pretty mild-mannered and wouldn't say anything about something like this. They were very direct about this, and that really points to just the sea change of everything that was that happened during that season. And Labonte's quote, I believe one of you guys shared that link with me. So you probably, I'm sorry if I'm not crediting the right person on this, but I know somebody sent that link to me about Labonte's experience with that hung throttle. So I want to make sure that that was in there. So big thanks to whoever brought that up. As my humanities professor told me in college, you're never going to have everything, but you can try to get the most you can. At some point, it's got to be just done. And I hope that this version at least is closer to that mark. We'll probably get some more information at some point that'll make that then, but I'm not planning on making this a thing to do too often. I know I had a question on here earlier about if I was going to update other videos on here. Probably not. I kind of tested that a bit with the Johnny Benson video. That one clearly needed to be re-uploaded because the audio clips were messed up. They were from the same source as the Jeff Bodine injury interview that came up in the original 3 before February, and I had the same concerns with people that weren't able to hear the audio. That just comes off unprofessional and it distracts from the video, and that was the first big reason that I wanted to reload this now. Haven't found a new version of that particular race to do it, and I didn't want to really test it because I figured it would have maybe the same problem. Yeah, probably the other videos on the channel, I'm going to just keep those the same. If I were to edit something, maybe that Sears Point one where it's really more about the Toyota Save Mart 350 than Sears Point, but I could probably just change the title and thumbnail and call it good there. And at least it will show up better in the search results. I think that's probably where the confusion came on that, but that's a whole different issue. Said Ed too, seeing your comment on there. Yeah, the crane testing a soft wall there. Okay, so I don't know if it was the same safer barrier that they were trying out at Indianapolis, because I know they had big plastic blocks. There was an IROC wreck where a car went into one of those barriers and they scattered them everywhere. I don't know if it was something like that or something else, but yeah, I'm not sure on that. Patty Spicer, thank you for your thoughts on the video there. I mean, it's certainly, it's definitely an emotional project, and again, I think that's why it was good to make sure to post it with the advisement at the beginning, because there is a significant tone shift from other videos on there, and I think that's maybe a reason why I'm very pleased with the response the videos had, but I think that's maybe why it doesn't have that many views. So again, I think this is a good way to forewarn people about that. On that, I'm checking other comments on here. No tires, just gas. Seeing your comment on Andrew Ranger. I'm open to that. I mean, it was cool seeing him over at Canada last year. I'm not sure if I do a video on him, but that's something to think about there at the same time. Something about Mark Martin's nephew, Martin Henderson. I'm not aware of that. Yeah, see, there's another thing. I can't confirm or anything on that. I didn't really get anything like that on the information that I found from my research on that, but that's definitely another one. Oh my goodness, I see a super chat on here. Thank you so much, Ball So Hard Will 1994. Big fan of your videos. What does NASCAR don't do that frustrates the most when it comes to safety? This could be past or current history. You know, I think, and Kyle Petty has spoken about this too. It's a very good question. Again, thank you for the super chat, first of all. Very good question on that. The issue, I would say, is NASCAR's decision to never go back on something. The issue always seems to be that they want to, when it comes to safety, or perhaps even something beyond it. And this kind of goes even beyond safety, but I know Kyle Petty was addressing it this way. The issue is NASCAR never seems to take a step backwards or undo something that doesn't work. The intention always seems to be to add something on top of it. And that's the problem I would say I have the most. And even when NASCAR introduces something like a Gen 6 car, it's not a brand new car. It still has the splitter underneath it. When they had these issues with these accidents, these fatal accidents in 2000, they put a restrictor plate on top of it. And I mentioned Kyle Petty because he had a mention a while back where he said that the restrictor plate was just meant to be a temporary solution to slow the cars down. And I know we have tapered spacers now, but constructively, that's basically the same thing. It's just thicker, and the spacer tapers down to a smaller hole at the bottom of it. It's functionally about the same. And well, okay, yeah, there's not carburetors now. They got the ECUs. There's other elements. But again, the technology has been built around it to serve that same function. It's not trying a different sized engine. It's not trying a substantially different car. It's not something like that. So I would say that would be the biggest concern. And I think that very much had a role in what happened during the 2000 season. And you see at one point, NASCAR is considering much more changes to the cars rather than changes to the way the driver is put in the car. Whether, and again, addressing the head and neck restraints. It's just talking about, okay, the cars need to be different. And let's reduce the horsepower. Let's put these wicker bills on there. And again, this came up also in the restrictor plate package that they had on the super speedways that year, because they had that boring Daytona 500 in the 2000. Darren Gilliam covers it well in his video as well as mine on Johnny Benson. You know, there's a lot of different details from that where NASCAR was trying to find the best super speedway restrictor plate package, and the one that Dale Earnhardt won with in the fall of 2000, which was ultimately used in the 2001 Daytona 500, was the result of all that effort. And so again, there's a possibility that perhaps the response NASCAR had wasn't as effective because their attention was made towards making the races more competitive than actually making them a bit more safe. Kind of reminds you a little bit about Formula One in 1994 when they got rid of the driver aids at teams like Williams and stuff when they were dominating, and then Ayrton Senna comes over and gets into that car. It's completely impossible to drive without the aids, and then whether or not that had a role in his accident, that's still something that's debated even today. And there's some overlap in there. So perhaps it's something that's endemic to motorsports itself and not just NASCAR. But I would say that would be a big frustration that I have, is the inability to take something that they're looking at and saying, you know what, we did this, it was a mistake, let's just not do that anymore and go back to this. It's like, oh, no, let's make this work and change this around it. That's always seems to be the response. It's very rare. I think one of the few cases we haven't seen that has been like having the Southern 500 on Labor Day weekend. That's one of the few cases I can think of where they had something in the past that worked, and now they're saying, okay, well, yeah, we shouldn't have had that race in Fontana. Now we're having it back at Darlington where it should have been. And, you know, what was the point of doing that anyway? You know, and luckily, you know, but the problem is, of course, is that something that's not a safety issue. It's something that's it's just much more in the surface analysis. And you hear this so much more now because now, of course, you know, listen to how many complaints, myself included, about getting to the point where we can have like high horsepower and small rear spoiler. Look how much that debate has been going. And what do? They move the car number to the side of the car. I swear, I do that meme probably once a year. That time this past year, I know it got a lot of traction a couple months ago. You know, I seem to do that every single year, and it always seems like that's always what happens. And not to harp on NASCAR too much on this, but it keeps happening. And so, you know, where everybody suggests one thing and then NASCAR changes something else, and then they suggest the one thing again, and then they change something else on top of it. You know, that would be the frustration. So I'm sure that's much more to your answer than you wanted, but that would be another thing on that. So yeah, that would be definitely another issue with everything that happened on that. And yeah, I'm seeing other comments. Yeah, I mean, F1 Hubert's accident in F2 and other ones. I mean, again, motorsports is a dangerous sport, but how much risk are you willing to take on? How much risk is acceptable in something that's inherently dangerous? It's a very hard legal question, which is why in a lot of these cases, families of drivers who pass away have very little recourse other than the insurance. That comes up in the book on J.D. McDuffie. There was a time, you know, it's getting a little away from the book, but there's a discussion in the book there where Linda told me, Linda McDuffie, JD's daughter, that she could only get, I believe it was some portion of some set number that was to be paid for a driver fatality, but he was an owner driver. So they were entitled to also the money that was, because he was an owner driver, it was also entitled to her from the owner portion of it there. And there was a big debate about that. And the amount was just, you know, some other cursory amount. Is it enough? Well, you know, that's really the difficult situation these drivers' families get in, and why it's so important to take safety as seriously as it really does need to be taken. You know, and I know that I've made statements about, you know, questioning things like the yellow line rule and racing to the caution flag and all that. And in some parts of that, those are issues where it would make the sport more competitive. But I think also in some cases, there are times where even those have made racing more dangerous, where if you can't go below the yellow line, everybody's confined into this short spot. And they're so afraid of getting shoved below the line. Maybe they hold their line. You have an issue like Carl Edwards going in the catch fence or other accidents like that. Racing to the caution flag at the same time. If NASCAR is going to continually make it, nobody knows whether a wreck is going to draw a caution or not draw a caution. Well, it seems like it would be easier to just either do all of one or all of the other. Either every time a wreck happens on the last lap, it draws a caution, or every time you let them go to the finish line, because racing is about the last lap. And it's dangerous to make these drivers, on top of focusing on the most critical aspect of the sport, just getting to that stripe, just getting to the finish line and not having to worry about anything else. It's so dangerous to force them at the same time to go into this and say, oh, well, you know, make sure the spotter tells me if there's a caution, I can slow down. And if you slow down, I mean, is the person behind you going to slow down? Or, you know, Tony Stewart had a wreck like that at Talladega in 2006, and he got turned into the backstretch wall, took him out of the race. He was just trying to follow the rules. So it's the inconsistent enforcement and the enforcement of rules that do end up creating dangers where none existed, or maybe creating a worse danger to replace one that maybe wasn't as bad, that need to be addressed. And that's another, again, a cultural issue to deal with in that at the same time. So that's another issue to kind of look at, and we do see this debate come up, and it comes up in Ryan Newman's accident, and thankfully it wasn't as bad as anything we saw in that video, and hopefully that becomes the norm. But you know, again, even in Ryan Newman's thing, NASCAR Man did a fantastic article on this, bringing down every example of Newman being outspoken on safety at the super speedways, because he seems to constantly get involved in these serious accidents. And everybody's like, and okay, the networks put it into their montages, and we'll go like, wow, look how amazing this wreck is. I've done it too. It's on my channel. I have Talladega.wmv is the same thing. I did that in 2010. So it's out there. But, you know, there comes a point where you have to kind of look at these a little bit and say, okay, well, hang on, why does this keep happening? And, you know, especially why does this keep happening to this driver? And so that's where safety requires, you know, it's maybe not the most fun aspect of the sport, but it's kind of like the infrastructure of the sport. You have to understand it a little better and take it more seriously when something serious happens. And maybe that's something where that all factors in. So That's definitely a concern. And again, it's a part of the problem is the kind of this false narrative. Dale Earnhardt in Speed Weeks 2001 was joking about an out of bounds line when he was making all those moves, and he himself was making a lot of those moves below the yellow, what would have been the yellow line today, going around in the 500 itself. And again, I'm not trying to assign blame or anything, but I'm just saying that the yellow line wasn't the reason that you had any of those accidents in that race. They both happened in between those lines. Tony Stewart's contact with Robbie Gordon and Ward Burton happened in the middle of the high lane on the backstretch. Any contact where Dale Earnhardt came loose came coming down within the boundaries, and Marlon was trying to go below where the yellow line was to avoid that impact. Those two most serious accidents would have still happened under today's rules. The question, of course, though, is what would they have been fatal or would they have been as serious? And that's where the current safety measures are important and why those need to be taken seriously. Because if you had both those accidents, Dale Earnhardt's accident, you had the safer barrier, you had the Hans device. You can't possibly know whether it would have been conclusively he would have been able to walk away from it. But you can hear from the video, the interview with the people that were involved in producing the Hans device, that they did believe that Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin would have been able to survive their accidents had they had the Hans device. I would have been interested to know if they believed that with Tony Roper. I don't believe that came up in the interview because that was a very different set of circumstances in being turned into the wall at a faster track. So that would have been interesting, but I don't have that information on that. But it's a serious issue in that, and I hope that legacy continues in the sport. And I do hope. I mentioned the NASCAR Hall of Fame in there, and those pictures in there are ones I took myself. I was looking to see what they were doing, something like that. I know there's fantastic people over there at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Tom Jensen and others there I know are fantastic stewards of the sport. But I hope that in the long term, something is done to commemorate the lives of drivers who lost their lives in the spirit of in competition. And I said 82 drivers. That's really among the top 3 series and the Canadian and Mexico series. I mean, I don't even know how many more there are from the weekly series and everything on top of it. So the number may be even more than that. But whatever the number is, I think there needs to be something like that to honor not just Dale Earnhardt, but everything around that. And again, it is something that maybe NASCAR doesn't want to address or something like that, but it's a critical component. And I think the way they have it with the Dale Earnhardt report there is a good start, but it's not the end product. I think something needs to be done there to have names like J.D. McDuffie and like Neil Bonnet and Grant Adcox and Terry Schoonover and Ricky Knott and Harold Kite and all these other drivers from way back in the beginning of the sport all the way up to Dale Earnhardt and past it. Was it Carlos Pardo and other competitors there. It's so many others from the series there. So that was a different one. But this is somebody mute Noah C there in the chat. The interesting difference with all of this is all that, and we got an interesting situation with all this that's happened from here in the 2000 season. So it's an interesting set of circumstances from this, but I hope that that's one other thing that comes from it is an issue with NASCAR being what it is and understanding maybe parts of this that the sport doesn't want to acknowledge, but it's important to remember. And I think steps are being made when we have drivers like Richie Evans remembered and others, but hopefully we're getting there. I'm not sure if we're getting there, so it'll be something like that at the same time. So again, I want to thank you all for checking it out. Let's see. I'm debating about doing some trivia on here. I know I got some questions about this earlier. If you guys want to do it, I wasn't sure if it would fit with the thing on here. But again, if you have any other questions on the video, I'll stay on here a little bit longer and do some trivia here in the meantime and keep that in there. But again, before I get into that again, thank you so much for those of you who are checking out the video 3 before February. Make sure that you share it with your friends and everybody. Share the link out there. Leave a comment and everything and all that in there and what your thoughts are on it. And what other stories you think I should cover on the channel. I'm certainly, open to other suggestions on that. I always keep that open on there. Definitely check out, for those of you who haven't checked out our website, lastcar.info. We cover last place finishers in the NASCAR races in the top 3 series. Our correspondent, William Saki, covers the last place battles in ARCA, and we have a lot of other content like that on the channel as well. So definitely look into that as well. We'll go ahead and jump into trivia here. I hope this isn't too much of a cognitive dissonance, but I know in a lot of my other live streams, people enjoy this here. But again, I'm still open to any questions on the video, and I think that's pretty much all the thoughts I have on that for now. But I'll stay on here for a little bit longer, and we'll do some more questions on here in the meantime. And for those of you new to watching here, I know we have a lot more people in here than we usually do. We're up to about 41. I think we had 44 people in here earlier. Definitely, if you like more live streams like this, stay tuned after the races. Usually after the last race of the weekend, we do a live stream after the race, usually about an hour or so, and kind of review the action. We do some of this trivia in here and kind of keep things light here as well. But also interested very much in making more videos on the channel and spreading the word about those. So at the risk of repeating myself too much on things like that, again, I hope you're interested, and go ahead and we'll jump into this here in the meantime. So our first, again, our categories, again, NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, and drivers, and the wild card are the categories here. Any other guesses or any other information that you'd like to, any other questions you guys have in the on the video or anything else? I'm certainly open to it. And just checking your other comments here to make sure there's other stuff I didn't miss from here. I see the comments on Gordon Smiley and Dan Weldon. Those were certainly, I mean, Dan Weldon's was certainly a profound moment in that. And it's really, gosh, I mean, something more recent in that sense. I see the link here, Martin Henderson, on the Christian Leventhal one. I'm going to bookmark that so I can check that one out as well. Thank you for sharing it. Let's see. Yeah, the Humpy Bumper. I got to look that up again too. That sounds familiar, but I'm trying to remember what that was. I know that was a big part of that as well. Whatever category you guys want to jump into here. I know no tires, just gas is a big fan of this, so I know he's out there. So we'll 15 seconds. There you go. Keep a little bit this here, so I don't leave you on necessarily the most harshest of notes. But we're certainly welcome to this. But any question you guys have on the videos, certainly don't hesitate to ask, and I'll certainly cover it here as long as I'm on here. Ken Schuler, you had a comment on Jeff Gordon's wrecks in 2006, especially. Yeah, absolutely agreed, especially his Pocono wreck. Thankfully, the safer barrier was there, the Hans device. That could have been very difficult. Hypezion, yes, you may be new to the group here. This is a Trivial Pursuit NASCAR a trivia game thing. It just has a little LED screen. This was made in 1998, around the same time when Kenny Irwin was starting in the sport. I've had this thing since graduating from high school back in 2001. And in these other live streams, people like trivia and keep things light in here. And I think especially dealing with such subject matter as this, I know I got a lot of requests for doing some trivia here. If you don't mind the dissonance of it, we'll go ahead and do this for a bit. But again, I'm certainly open to any questions you like on that. Oh my goodness, Ball So Hardwell, 1994. Thank you for another super chat. Could you do a video of Jason Leffler 2001 rookie season? I would love that. He had a badass paint scheme with the singular car. That would be interesting. I remember when he won the pole at Kansas, in the inaugural Kansas race. I thought that was the coolest thing, and I did like that paint scheme. I was much more partial to the one there from Benny. The Bell South paint schemes I think were much more colorful, but the singular paint scheme, especially when it started there in the Dodge, was cool. So that was an interesting thing. Tyler Head, thanks for joining in, man. Liked your videos on the IROC series. But yeah, absolutely bringing out the Kenny Irwin Jr. hat today. There would be none better on that for sure. And I have the Kenny Irwin fan shirt that I found a few months ago. I have that one set aside there as well. But yes, we'll do the trivia. I think we had some questions for drivers. We had 4 for drivers. We'll go ahead and start with that one. And if you guys have any other questions, 2001, Patty, you think I'm young on that? Yeah, well, 2001 from high school. But yeah, that was, yeah, so I'm 30. I always lose track of the years. It'd be 38 this October. Again, 20 years goes by extremely quick. So we'll see on here. We'll start with the drivers category to do this. But yes, I'm open to that ball so hard, Will, on the video on Jason Leffler. Again, I mentioned this in past live streams when Leffler passed away in his own tragic accident, the sprint car race there. That one really made me kind of change course in terms of how I approach my articles about last place finishers, where before that, the focus was much more on the historical significance of each last place finish and kind of the last car championship, which is still there, which kind of keeps things light and fun and all that. And I know a lot of people kind of, view it as kind of a thing like that. So it's a different deal here. So yeah, and different deal on that. But it's a different situation there with all that. But I am open to doing some more stuff there on Leffler. I think that would be an interesting video. But yeah, the change there that happened with Leffler is I did much more on driver profiles and things of that nature and doing all that. So that was a bigger part of all that. So maybe we do some more content like that. We did the features on Johnny Benson and other teams that maybe struggled a bit, but had some interesting things going behind the scenes. And Jason Leffler, much like Kenny Irwin that he replaced, was another driver that maybe we didn't get to see the best of. Maybe he was in different situations that weren't working very well, and that was just kind of the way that all shook out. So different situation there. All righty. So let's get into the first driver question here. Okay, here we go. Okay, hang on. That one's too easy. Let's try to get some more challenging ones here. Here we go. First one's about Kansas here. What Topeka, Kansas driver was the 1975 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? What Topeka, Kansas driver was the 1975 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year is our first question. Ooh, what's my favorite rookie class? That's a very good question. My goodness. 2001 was pretty amazing. They had a really deep roster of drivers that year, even before what tragically happened at Daytona. You had Kurt Busch, you had Casey Atwood, you had Jason Leffler, you had Andy Houston. You had a lot of guys that were just looking for, working their way up the ladder. And I remember how exciting it was. The 21-25s in 2001 are fantastic. They were definitely worth a watch, where you had drivers that were working their way into it. And that was probably a big one that I liked. Ever since then, it seems like we've always had at least one driver that was blowing the doors off everybody else. And Harvick did end up doing that, even with Kurt, who was solid enough to get it on his own, had Harvick not been in there, but a different one. What Topeka, Kansas driver was the 1975 Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? We have guesses for Gant, Ronnie Thomas, Dick Brooks, Bruce Hill. Yeah, it sounds like a Boyer question, doesn't it? But yeah, again, we're talking the late 90s. The trivia here. So we'll do that. The answer is indeed Bruce Hill. Kenny Powers, you got it. Patty Spicer, you got it. Martin Henderson. Yes, indeed. Bruce Hill is the correct answer on that. Just passed away recently, if I'm not mistaken. It was too bad. They did a great throwback scheme on AJ Allmendinger's car at Darlington a couple of years ago. And I remember him commenting on that. I think I have an interview with Allmendinger when he showed up at Sears Point, was talking about that. So that was something. Atwood finished ahead of Kurt in points that year. See, I'd forgotten about that. Atwood, I remember picking Atwood to win Homestead that year, which is easy to say in retrospect, but I swear I did. That it seemed, because I remember thinking that he won the Busch race at Milwaukee, and he should be good at Homestead. It's substantially just a bigger version of the same track. But that was a different set of circumstances. But yeah, he actually finished ahead of him. Wow, that's surprising. It seemed like Kurt would have that because he had that Rubbermaid sponsorship come on after John Deere hiked out, and things changed hands on that. All righty, next question. Oh, hey, how about this? Here we go. What black road racer toyed with a NASCAR Winston Cup career in the 80s? There we go. What black road racer toyed with a NASCAR Winston Cup career in the 80s? Some of you who have been watching some documentaries may know the answer to this one recently. And it looks like you guys are getting it already. What black road racer toyed with a NASCAR Winston Cup career in the 80s? And indeed, the answer is Willie T. Ribbs. You guys got it. Yep, Willie T. Ribbs. That was Very interesting documentary, I have to say. It was, and from the Bay Area. I didn't know that. That was very surprising. You know, my own neck of the woods there. So very interesting. Another one that's viewer discretion advised for sure, but definitely worth seeing. Alrighty. Who was the only outsider to be an honorary member of the Alabama gang? Who was the only outsider to be an honorary member of the Alabama gang? Yeah, Newman was consistent in 2002, and he won the All-Star race that year too. That's something that doesn't get talked about that much. He made his first start at the end of 2000. That gets seen in the Darrell Waltrip video. I do a lot of videos on the 2000 season. If you're interested in more stuff on that year, not just what happened in the safety issues, I have one on Johnny Benson's season, Johnny in the Fast White Car, about the upset runs he had in a virtually unsponsored or underfunded number 10 car for Tyler Jet Motorsports. Have one on Darrell Waltrip's final season, the Victory Tour that had its ups and downs that same year. I also have videos talking about the way NASCAR culture was in the late 90s, which also really carries over into the early 2000s, really, with some of the competitors. Alrighty. What was the only outsider to be an honorary member of the Alabama gang? Okay, Kyle Busch. Okay, fun answers here. Red Farmer, Hut Strickland, Allison, Red Farmer, Petty, Junior Johnson, Randy the Plumber. Okay, all the fun ones here. Alrighty, and the answer is Cale Yarborough. That doesn't seem to be right. It says Cale Yarborough. An honorary member of the Alabama. It seems like that would have been a Hut Strickland or a Neil Bonnet question, is if they wanted to talk about the Allison family. But I mean, Neil Bonnet was pretty close with them there. Yeah, it says Cale Yarborough. Here, take a look. It says Cale Yarborough right there. Now this thing, for those of you new to the stream tonight, this thing has been wrong a few times, unfortunately. I think during the end of our show for Homestead, I believe it was, it got like 2 questions in a row wrong at the end. And I was just like, well, I think we're going to call it. Oh, that's right. We had the Bill Elliott car too, and that one wasn't working. We have a car, the 24 scale car that also does trivia questions. That one's at the other location. We may bring that back for our Kentucky show next Sunday, but we'll do that. But that one was getting some weird answers too. But yeah, Cale Yarborough. I have never heard that. I will freely admit when I have not heard of something. What, Timmonsville, South Carolina, right? I mean, okay, it's the South, but yeah, okay, all right, honorary. I wonder what made it. If there's a moment that made him an honorary member. Well, heck, if he was the one that was involved in the '79 Daytona 500 fight, was that why? I don't know. I don't think that would help. I think that would actually make it worse to have him be in it. Yeah, there you go. Martin Henderson. Yeah, you called it already. Yeah. Jimmy Kitchens. There you go. How about something like that? All right, here we go. What driver won his 4th NMPA Driver of the Year award in 1990? What driver won his 4th NMPA Driver of the Year award in 1990? Do I watch Randy the Plumber? I do. He's quite fun. I think it's this is the reason that I don't do live streams during the races, because it would probably sound like Randy the Plumber at the end of the day, especially since I have a friendly rivalry with my brother where we do these different picks. And of course, what happened? He picked Kevin Harvick in Indianapolis, and thankfully I did not pick Denny Hamlin. Otherwise, it would have certainly been a Randy the Plumber moment. Although back at the Coca-Cola 600, I picked Keselowski and he picked Chase Elliott, and you can just imagine how that evening went. And I did end up buying the shirt just because I thought that was funny. So we had that one as well. What driver won his 4th NMPA Driver of the Year award in 1990? Okay. All right. And okay. All righty. And the answer is Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt is the correct answer. Dale Earnhardt seems to be the right answer for a lot of this. But there you go. Yeah, the Cale Yarborough one, I'm still wrapping my head around that. That doesn't seem right. But, yeah. Alrighty. Oh, here we go. Here's a fun one. I don't know this one. What driver grew up on Couch and Sedan Street in North Carolina? What driver grew up on Coach, I say crack, Coach and Sedan Street in North Carolina? It's not 15 seconds. We had one, for those of you, again, new to this, we've the lore that's been developing here on these live streams. We had one where I think every question was either Ray Fox or 15 seconds because there were pit rules and everything. What driver grew up on Coach and Sedan Street in North Carolina? Yeah, it looked like crack, but it says Coach. Coach and Sedan Street. It's got the calculator letters on here, as you can see from earlier. Yeah, here, actually, I'll show you right there. There you go. Again, that's why I got these. It's not the best view. Alrighty. What driver grew up on Coach and Sedan Street, North Carolina? The answer is Dale Earnhardt. Okay, this is going to be Dale Earnhardt night. We got Dale Earnhardt questions. Okay. We'll do a few more here. Good call in the drivers category. We've had some wild cards usually been really good before, but I think this driver one's doing pretty well here. Looks like a lot of you guys got that. Yeah, Bean Boy, you got it. LGR 88, Blake Thiemann, all you guys. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Richard Petty had a lot. Yeah, that's right. Richard Petty had a lot of answers. Okay, here we go. What driver was the 1991 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? What driver was the 1991 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? That is our next question. What driver was the 1991 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie, of the Year? This brought to you by Coca-Cola, as Kenny Irwin was part of the Coca-Cola racing family. So that was another ad campaign, of course, as well. I pronounced your last name right. Right on. Okay, good. I have a lot of experience. I work, for those of you, again, I hate to keep prefacing this, but I sense a lot of you guys are new. I actually work registering patients in the emergency room, and my job is I see the name come up, and I always try to give one shot at getting the name right coming in there, whatever it is. It's always a good challenge, so I'm glad that's helping out here. I do try to at least give it a shot. If I get it wrong, mea culpa and move forward. Okay. What driver was 91 Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? The answer is indeed Bobby Hamilton, the late Bobby Hamilton. Jack Garland, you got it. Kenny Powers, Ultimate 23 Dragon, you got it. Martin Henderson, you got it. Stephen C., yeah, there you go, you got it. Bobby Hamilton is indeed the correct answer. The Country Time lemonade car, the only lemonade at Nascar headquarters, I will admit, for sure. Not just for Bobby, but also for Neil. All right, we'll do a few more questions here. Okay, what's this? I'm on the West Coast, so it's 6:43 Western time here. Yes, condolences to Charlie Daniels. I made mention of that on Twitter there as well. Condolences to his family. You know, I was discussing this with the family, and it was said of Duke Ellington, the great jazz musician, that when he passed away, you know, he left such a legacy in his music that you didn't have to believe he was gone if you didn't want to, because music was out there, and that's as much. And I think as a musician, that's probably the highest praise that you can give somebody, and certainly Charlie Daniels is another one of those. If it's Devil Went Down to Georgia or any of his other music from there, big part of that too. So condolences to his family, his friends, and his fans. And, you know, I know Mike Harmon's team in particular was very close to them, did a lot of work with him. Andy Petrie's team did some promotions with him years ago as well. That one is as well. So, yes, condolences certainly to Charlie Daniels. I also want to make a mention here. I didn't mention this on the Sunday show. My condolences also to the family of Dick and Ware. He was a media person that I had worked with for the last few years. He had covered races on the West Coast, a lot of races at the Sonoma Raceway and at Phoenix and other events. And he never avoided, you know, a time to talk to me. Always free to talk in the media center, and it is not going to feel the same without him. Tragically, he passed away from cancer last month. So my condolences to him as well. Not to not to make things too serious in here, but certainly I would be remiss if I didn't make mention on one of these shows. So certainly to him. Another one here. Okay. Oh, okay, that one's too easy. Oh, wait, that one was wrong. Oh, wait, no, that one wasn't wrong. Okay. This next one here. I had a question on here. It was saying what state was Jeff Gordon born in, and I was wondering if it was going to give the wrong answer and say Indianapolis, but it said California. So, okay, we'll disregard that and get the next one here on that one. Oh, okay, that one's too easy. What driver was the 1987 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? What driver was the 1987 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year is our next question. What's going on there? Serious. Okay. What driver was the 1987 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? 87. Isaac McKissick, you're close. You have the 86 Rookie of the Year. But the answer is indeed Davey Allison is the correct answer. Correct. Yeah, we may get more Rookie of the Year questions. Some of those get tricky if you look a bit further back. It's surprising who did and who did not win it. Just ask Darrell Waltrip about Lenny Pond. Ask Ernie Irwin about Ken Bouchard. Ask Casey Mears about Jamie McMurray. Several examples. That last one maybe is less surprising, but there's other ones too. Alrighty. Who was, oh, here we go. Another Rookie of the Year question. Who was the oldest driver ever to be named NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? The oldest driver ever to be crowned NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year. Ask Dale Jr. about Kenseth. Bingo. There's another one. Ask Jimmy about Newman. Ask, what's a fun one? How about ask Stephen Light about Josh Wise? That was a weird one. If you look at Rookie of the Year from between 2010 and 2014, it was a desert. It's very strange how things kind of stagnated a little bit. And a lot of drivers for small teams, which it was cool that they got featured. You got guys like Andy Lally, Kevin Conway, Stephen Light, Josh Wise. Up until Kyle Larson won Rookie of the Year, you had a different set of circumstances there. Okay, we got several guesses. Dick Trickle, we got Hensley, Gantz. These are all good guesses. Bush, Moffitt in 2015. It's going to be a bit before that, but we got the oldest driver to be named NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year. The answer is indeed Dick Trickle. Talk about Conway to know it. Yeah, Kevin Conway is a fun one. I have a Kevin Conway shirt. I don't know if it fits anymore, but it's from the Extend sponsorship, and it says "We never finished last." It's a little not safe for work, but I was starting the last car site. I had to get that one. So if it all fits, you may see me wear it on one of these shows. But that would be that was an interesting sponsorship on that. So that was one there. The answer is Dick Trickle, indeed. You guys, I can several of you guys got it. See, Sedhead 2, Isaac McKissick, Stephen C, Frida Mater, Jack Garland. You put Trifle, it's close enough. Jack Garland, Ultimate 23 Dragon. There we go. Several of those. Yeah, that sure is funny. I'll dig it up. I found the Jeffrey Earnhardt one to put on Sunday's show because I remember mentioning that. Maybe I'll wear that for Kentucky. I'll see if it fits. You don't need to see that on camera if it doesn't fit, but I'll see if it does. If it does, I may bring that out next week. I'll see what I can find there. Okay. Drivers here. Kyle Petty ripping Conway at Daytona is a highlight of my career. Wow. There you go. Here we go. Another rookie. We must be either reaching the bottom or the top of the list here because now we have another one. What driver was the 1964 Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Don't look it up. Try to guess it. I know you guys are guessing, but we'll do this. What driver was the 1964 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? What driver? No, not Joey Logano. Lund, David Pearson, Ned Jarrett, Waltrip. All good guesses. The 1964 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year. Wasn't the other Jimmy Johnson the infomercial? I think he was. I believe he was. That was a weird time. Maybe we'll have to do a Kevin Conway video. That would be fun. Maybe or maybe not. It would probably get instantly demonetized, so I don't know. All righty. Hey, Kyle. Welcome aboard. We're just doing a little bit of trivia here. We'll do a few more questions so you can get a chance at a few of them here. We just finished a good discussion on 3 before February. Just finished the premiere here just a little while ago. All right, you got several good guesses. Gober, like Gober Sotheby. There's a good guess, Dusty. Paul Goldsmith, Lund, anyone the Petty family, Fireball Roberts. All righty. The answer is Doug Cooper. Doug Cooper is the correct answer. Wow, this one's okay. Getting it harder. This is a harder one. Yeah, Coke's not paying me. I'll believe it. I just happen to have that here. Doug Cooper is the correct answer. The 1964 Rookie of the Year. Billy Wade did pass away that year. That would be Martin. You're close there. You're very close. Yeah, Tony Lund, Fireball Roberts. Yeah, there you go. Who? Yeah, who indeed? Doug Cooper. Well, how about this? Let's go over to our good friends over at Racing Reference and pull up some stats here on Doug Cooper. All righty. Always open to discussion. From Gastonia, North Carolina, passed away in 1987, made 113 Cup starts. He made 39 races in 1964. He made 2 prior to that. Had 4 top 5s and 11 top 10s, finished 21st in the point standings. He drove the number 02 and then the number 60 Ford for multiple teams. He finished 5th and 4th in the last 2 races of the year at Augusta and Jacksonville. What was his best finish? He had 11 top 5s, 29 career top 10s. Best finish was 3rd on 3 occasions. Hillsborough in 63, Spartanburg at 64, and 66. I think he would. Was it the same race that Wendell Scott won? No, that was 64. This was 63. There was overlap back then, but yeah, okay. Was it this one? Was it that one? No, that was Richard Petty. Okay. Always would be great if you have a little bit of overlapping with the stats there. Okay, yeah, not bad at all. It was owned by his family. Looks like it was shows Bob Cooper as a listing. It could be a coincidence, but usually looks like, see, Bob Field Cars for anyone else. He was sponsored by German Mobile Homes at Maryville in 1966, but not showing a sponsor for most of these starts. And yeah, it was like Bob Cooper. He used to race in the 60s, but he did field cars for other drivers. Pop McGinnis, there's a fun one. Walson Gardner, Daniel Warlick. You want to get really obscure? Man, oh man, you've come to the right place. Jim DeMeo. Jimmy Helms, who briefly ran Richard Petty's car once. I have an article on that. Darrell Derringer, big safety advocate too. Roy Main. Walson Gardner. There's a fun one. If you want to really stump your friends, to ask them if they know anything about Walson Gardner from Laurinburg, North Carolina, with 24 Cup starts and a best finish of 8th at Weaverville in 1968. There you go. See, these are the facts that we always want to get there at the same time. Look up Dick Brooks. Dick Brooks is fun too. Dick Brooks won their last race for Plymouth, didn't he? I think that was one of the questions that the Bill Elliott car got wrong. When it was asking who won Plymouth's last race, and it instead put who won their first race. So. Yeah, Dick Brooks. Yeah, it was 73, right? 73 at Talladega, Crawford Brothers Plymouth. Yeah, the Mickey Mouse car. Dick Brooks, 358 Cup starts. Last of them in 1985, 57 top 5s, 150 top 10s, no pole positions. Final start. Wow, final start was in a Rick Hendrick car. How about that? Dick Brooks' last start was driving for Rick Hendrick in the Coca-Cola 600 in 1985. Where did he finish? 10th place. 10th place. How about that? At what age? At 43. Okay, I was thinking he was older than that. So 12 years after his last win, gets a top 10 finish in his last start, his 150th top 10. Kudos to the man, the myth, legend, Dick Brooks. I think I've seen pictures of that, the Exxon sponsored car that showed up before. But yeah, Doug Cooper. So we got some information on that. Okay, here, let's see what we got else here. Oh, here we go. Okay, not a rookie year question. Here's another one. What driver won the 1952 Southern 500, 52 Southern 500 at Darlington while wearing Bermuda shorts? What driver won the 1952 Southern 500 at Darlington while wearing Bermuda shorts is our next question. Okay, we got guesses for Petty. Don't look it up on Racing Reference. What driver won the 1952 Southern 500 at Darlington while wearing Bermuda shorts? All right, Petty, Weatherly, Herb Thomas, Lee Petty. All good guesses. Pearson, Bonnie Flock. One thing that's great about Darlington, I've mentioned this before, but if you get a chance to go to the Darlington Hall of Fame, there's a wall where they have 24 scale models made of all the Southern 500 winners. It is so cool to look at. We went over there. I probably spent like a good 10 minutes just looking at that. because there's so many models they did all the way up to now. So you got even the throwback schemes at the end, and then the schemes they're based off of on the first part of it. It's so awesome. Definitely worth seeing. I think I have some pictures on Twitter of that. If you check that out, I may put. I'll see if I can put those up there too, so you can check that out. Hoob Rothengotter, Herb Thomas, Red Byron, Lee Petty. Yeah, that museum is definitely worth seeing. You also have Bill Elliott's Winston Million car in there in 1985, which has its own special room. The NMPA Hall of Fame, which has mementos from like everybody that's in there. They have a nice display about like, I don't know, a big picture glass with like Chris Economaki's microphone and Tim Richmond's uniform and, you know, things like that. Just awesome stuff. So definitely worth checking out. The answer is Fonty Flock. Fonty Flock is the correct answer. I think somebody had that. Stock Car Racing League. There you go. It's actually his idea to wear the shorts. There you go. Did somebody else have that? I know some people. Yeah, there you go. Dusty DeBoer, you got it too. You actually got it first. So there you go. I should get some chameleon sunglasses. Again, interesting thing with the chameleon sunglasses that sponsored Dick Brooks. They were tied to Watkins Glen because the Corning Glass Company was looking to sponsor a team, and that was the one that worked with that. So yeah, good guess, Dusty. There you go. Yeah, Tim Richmond. Yeah, Tim Richmond's in the NMPA Hall of Fame, and his display is right next to Harry Hyde's, which is really cool. Yeah, so definitely worth seeing. Yeah, yes, Tim Richmond, absolutely. 1986 Siren 500 winner. He's in the display case too. I got to post pictures of the display case. Stay tuned to my Twitter account at LastCarOnBrock. I'll hustle up those pictures if I can and put those up. They're worth seeing, but it's even better in person for sure. Yes, and there is an ARCA driver named Tim Richmond. William Saki did his feature on him. No relation. He's very clear to point that out. But did drive for Wayne Peterson. Unfortunately, didn't get to complete a lap with engine issues. Check out William's feature on it that was just posted last night, early this morning, for the full write-up on that at lastcar.info. Should be still the first article on the site. All right. What driver was the 1982 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Another Rookie of the Year question. What driver was the 1982 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? My birth year. There we go. 1982. Yeah, he needs to be in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely. Absolutely. He's in the NMPA Hall of Fame, or whatever it's called, the one mentioned in here. Who won the 1982 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Ken Schrader, Mark Martin, Jeff Bodine, Gary Ballou. Bodine. Other guesses. Don't look it up. Go ahead and just make a guess. Wrap up here probably in a little bit. Let's get a little late on this side here. And we'll go from there. Oh, did that ever get posted? Okay. I'm sorry. I don't think I posted the link to the live stream here, but hopefully people found it afterwards. But we do have that. Oh, wait. I put it in the comments. That's fine. Okay. That's probably why I didn't post it. Just keep that there. Very pleased with the response here. The answer is Jeff Bodine. Jeff Bodine is the correct answer. So Isaac McKissick, you said Bodine. That's good. We'll use Jeopardy rules on that. Freedomator, Nathaniel Ivey, Hypazion, Martin Henderson, you got it. Ultimate 23 Dragon, said at 2, plus Stuart Ponate. There you go. Yes, Jeff Bodine is the correct answer. And I think Freedomator or Isaac McKissick, you got it first, basically. You got Bodine. The first one we have Jeff Bodine, Freedomator. There we go. Okay. What driver was the 1980 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? What driver was the 1980 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? I hope you guys studied your Rookies of the Year. I didn't know this was going to be the theme here at the end of the show. But you may get this one here. What driver was the 1980 1980 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? You guess this for Waltrip, Ty Scott, Gary who? Try to put the full name if you can, because there's some of these names may get a little common. More of these we do. Yes, the Slap Shoes video. Yeah, Slap Shoes is great stuff there. Really enjoy his content. What driver? Just watched this Walt Disney World Speedway thing last night, so that was good. It's too bad he got hustled out of there, but obviously filming things sometimes gets tricky in some of these places. What driver was the 1980 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Waltrip, Ridley, Ballou. The answer, Jody Ridley, Stock Car Racing League, you got it. And Martin Henderson, you got it too. There you go. Excellent. Gary Berghoff. Okay. There you go. Jody Ridley is indeed the correct answer. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. Thank you guys for sticking it out here. We'll do a couple more here to wrap up, and then we'll see how many more Rookie of the Year questions we get. Here we go. What driver was the 1996 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? What driver was the 1996 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? What driver was the 1996 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Did I say the last answer was Jody Ridley? Because it was. Yeah, it was Ridley. What driver was the 1996 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? This is for Craven. That was the first thought I had, but no, it is indeed Johnny Benson Jr. You do have that. Yep. I know Ultimate 23 Dragon. You got it. Absolutely. Martin Henderson, Isaac McKissick, Freedom Mater, Nathaniel Ivey. You guys are too good at this. You guys are too good at this. You guys are ringers. Okay. Next question. What driver was the, I swear I'm not making this up. What driver was the 1988 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Yeah, Craven had the crash at Talladega in 96. That's correct. What driver? Yeah, well, Sedhead. Yeah, there you go. You nailed it, Sedhead. Yeah, you got the name of a ringer. What driver was the 1988 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? 88 Winston Cup Rookie of the Year. Rick Wilson, Ken Bouchard, Kowicki, Wilson, Ricky Irvine, Rick Wilson, Bouchard. This is a tricky one. 88 was a very competitive season. I mean, you have the tire war issue, which NASCAR Man covered, and Slap Shoes for that matter. Both covered that very well. But in the background, you have this Rookie of the Year battle. What driver was the 1988 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Is the last question. David Spade. No, not quite. All righty. And the answer is Ken Bouchard. Sedhead 2, you got it first, man. Sedhead 2, you got it. I think you were the only one to get it. Ken Bouchard. Yes, Ernie Irvin was in that rookie season, but he ultimately lost the Rookie of the Year candidate to Ken Bouchard, who drove for a new team called Bob Whitcomb Racing, who eventually hired Derek Cope and won the Daytona 500 2 years later. Ken Bouchard is your answer. Yep, Bob Whitcomb. There you go. Very interesting statistic. I always like referring back to that one. What driver was the 1985 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? What's up, NASCAR Fan 93-100? You're coming in just here at the end, but we'll wrap up here. What driver was the 1985 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Ken Bouchard, yep. Yes, indeed, related to Ron Bouchard. More Rookie of the Year, yeah, more Rookie of the Year. I haven't changed categories. It's just more Rookie of the Year. What driver was the 1985 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? We got Schrader, Martin, Waltrip, Burt Reynolds, Stroker Ace, perhaps. What driver was the 1985 Aubrey James NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? When Rick Houston completes 24 Hours of Lamonas, I hope that he does get the exclusive Stroker Ace cover scanned into the collection as well. I hope that that's going to be in there as well. That would be amazing. And again, our kudos. I know personally how difficult it is to maintain a steady workout schedule. I may not look like it, but I was a college athlete for crew back in 2001 to 2005. And I know how very difficult that is because I had no prior experience and I had to hit the ground running on that. So I know what he is doing is no easy task. And he is literally putting blood, sweat, and tears out there to make the scene vault happen there. So kudos to Rick primarily, and of course Marcus Lamonis for putting that forward. And I wish him the very best on that if he's watching out there. What driver was the 1985 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? And the answer is indeed Kenny Schrader. Stroker Ace is 83. There you go. Aldo Benedetti. There you go. Yeah, I don't know how many rookie. I mean, somebody I'm sure will go through this video and they'll find how many rookie of the years we get in a row. Let's see what we get. Okay. Okay, another one. I feel reluctant to stop. I'm getting a little uncomfortable sitting in this chair this long, but I feel reluctant to stop until we don't get another Rookie of the Year question. I think I'm going to end up doing this. I don't know how many questions this has. I mean, the package is long since gone. But all right, what driver was the 1990 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? They're not even in any order, which makes it even harder. What driver was the 1990 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Now, this is going up to 98, so we'll probably do that. Yeah, anybody who has the comments, definitely put it in the comments below. I would be happy to know because I have already long since lost count. But we'll keep going until we don't get any more of these. All right, I sure don't have a category selected. Yeah, I do. It's blinking the wedge that represents drivers. I swear this doesn't have a Rookie of the Year category. All righty, we're going all the way, folks. What driver was the 1990 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? 1990. And the answer is indeed Robbie Moroso. The late Robbie Moroso tragically won it posthumously after the tragic traffic accident that claimed the life of himself and another person after he ran the September New Hampshire race in 1990. Robbie Moroso is the correct answer, beating Jack Pennington, who was a driver that pretty much fell off the face of the earth after the 1990 season, at least in NASCAR's top division, but apparently was very competitive that season. Robbie Moroso. Another one. What driver was the 1981 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Same verse, same as the 31st. What driver was the 1981 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Yeah, it was after Wilkesboro. Correct. Yeah, he ran Wilkesboro and then it happened. Yeah, you're right. What driver was the 1981 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? We got guesses for Bouchard. We got guesses for Labonte and Brett Bodine. Bouchard. Nice set head. I like that. I see you there. Ron Bouchard is indeed the correct answer. Ron Bouchard. Absolutely correct. Oh, my God. It's going to be all of them. What driver was the 1984 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? I mean, we're gonna run out of years. Who programmed this? Who programmed this? Oh my goodness. I guess if you stare into the abyss stares back. What driver was the 1984 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? 1984. Did Bouchard win one in trivia? Yes, Ken Bouchard did. So we have Ron Bouchard. They are brothers, I believe. Ron, the older brother, just passed away recently. Won Talladega in 81. Ken Bouchard, the Rookie of the Year, in 88. Jean Girard, Jimmy Means, Rusty Wallace. The answer is indeed Rusty Wallace. Russell Wallace. Alrighty. Let's do this. Let's do this, folks. We're gonna do the next question because I don't know what the next question is going to be. I have a good guess of what the category is going to be. What year Rookie of the Year is going to be the next question? Put that in the comments. What year Rookie of the Year is going to be the next year that we haven't done? This is going to be tricky because we've done a lot of years. We've hopped all over the place. We know that it's going to be another Rookie of the Year question. You don't have to guess what the Rookie of the Year was. Just guess the year. We got to guess 77, 97. Okay, go ahead. Punch that in. Punch that in. We're going to just first year that pops in your mind, jump right into it. We'll hit the button here, and we'll see who's right on this. And we will find out what Rookie of the Year is going to be the next Rookie of the Year that this thing is going to ask. And it may just not be, well, no, it's going to be another Rookie of the Year question because, of course, it's going to be. All righty, 93, 95, 2085. Good. Keep punching those in. Keep punching those in. We're going to get the next question here in just a moment. 2020. No, probably not. But we're going to 1903. All right, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Drivers. What driver was the 1983 Rookie of the Year? 1983. Who guessed 83? Hypasion, you got it. 1983. Stock Car Racing League, you also got it. Jack Garland, you got it. All right, there we go. 1983 Cup Rookie of the Year. Now put in your guesses. What driver was the 1983 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? I'm having fun. I hope you guys are too. Beast of Metal, in memoriam. Thank you for the super chat, first of all. In memoriam of the insanity of a trillion Rookie of the Year questions. I kind of have to know how far down the rabbit hole goes. I kind of do. It can't keep going. It can't. Do you think the NHRA overreacted? I don't know much about the NHRA, but I know they've had safety issues of their own. Of course, a lot of incidents that happened in that. I'm not sure entirely, but yeah. Are you having a blast, Nathaniel? Thank you. I'm glad you are. We'll keep going with this. We're gonna keep going either until this battery runs out or we don't have another Rookie of the Year question in the driver category. How's that sound? We're gonna do that. I hope my folks don't mind that I'm in here this long, but we're gonna try. Gosh, we're almost at hour 40. Okay. All right. Okay. And the answer is Sterling Marlin, of course. Okay. Should just pull up the Rookie of the Year wiki page and sweat this. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Okay, good. Thank you for Kazi Games. Okay, there you go. Kazi. Is Kazi in here? I didn't see him. Right on. If you are, welcome aboard. Okay. What driver was the 1994 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? What driver was the 1994 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? I am not free yet. Yeah. What driver was the 1994 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Don't look up Racing Reference, although at this point you probably are already, and I can't hardly blame you. All righty. Need to extend the sand travel. I mean, there'll be something on that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know much about drag racing. I know that, again, yeah, they've had their concerns. It's too bad hearing about John Force's team not running the next event here. I know that there's obviously a lot of concerns with reactivating everything, but maybe that'll ease up. Who knows? The 1994 Rookie of the Year. You know what's going to happen? We're going to start getting Busch Series Rookie of the Year. This thing is just never going to end. Oh my goodness. All right. No cheating, people. Yeah. Keep on. Keep on. Keep on. Keep on. Keep it on. Keep it on. Guy on this hat won Rookie of the Year a year too. So we haven't seen him yet. Jeff Burton is indeed the correct answer. You guys all got it. Jeff Burton. Wad Burton's brother. There you go. That was a good rookie group too. 94 was a very good rookie group. Jeff Burton, Ward Burton, Joe Nemechek, Steve Grissom, Loy Allen, Rodney Orr, technically, unfortunately. Not John Andretti, I don't think. Or was it? Maybe it was. Yeah, there's a lot of them. All right. Okay. What driver? Oh, wait a minute. This is phrased differently. Stop! What driver was the NASCAR Winston Cup champ in 1977? Okay, we don't have a Rookie of the Year question. It was like that moment. You ever see Groundhog Day where he wakes up and they play the same song again? He thinks it's the same day again, and then he hears a different call there. That's what I just had on this. So we don't have a rookie question. We have a different one. We'll see in our Kentucky show if the streak picks up again, and we may have another issue. But the streak is broken. The streak is broken. What driver, it was worded almost the same. What driver was the NASCAR Winston Cup champ in 1977? All right, we have guesses for Yarborough, Benny Parsons, Little Caesars. There we go, all the fun ones. All right. You want to remember the Alabama game? Hey, full circle. We've gone full circle, full oval, perhaps, in racing. And the answer is indeed Cale Yarborough. Okay, yeah, and it's okay. It's not doing Rookie of the Year questions anymore. Okay, we're gonna call it good there, folks. It's been quite the show tonight. Have you guys had a good time? I hope you have. And I know it's been a lot going on here, and I'm glad we could leave it on a fun note here with everything with the video and all that. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to the live stream tonight. Thank you to Beast of Metal and what was it, Big Willie Style there for the super chats. Thank you, everyone, for your support and checking out the video 3 before February. Make sure you leave a comment in this video. Tell me how many Rookie of the Year questions we did have. Make sure you leave comments and share the 3 Before February video. And again, Godspeed to Adam Petty, Kenny Irwin Jr., Tony Roper, Dale Earnhardt, Blaze Alexander, and all other drivers who lost their lives in pursuit of victory. This one's for them, as we remember them along with other moments in the sport, and hope for a better future there. So have a good night, everyone. Stay tuned for more content on this channel here. LastCar.info is the website. At LastCarOnBrock is the Twitter. Patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock is the Patreon. We will be back for another live stream and more trivia next Sunday after 4 races in Kentucky. That, with this rain and lightning delays, will probably all end up on one day starting at 4 in the morning, and we'll just get through it as best we can. And this last race will probably be cut short by rain, and who knows, but we'll find out. So, again, thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a good night, everyone, and we will see you next time.